present arms.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, arms. Color order, march. Right, face. Mark time, march. Forward, march.
We do not have any public participation on agenda items. Mr. Moravich, would you like to say anything?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mrs. Carroll, any communications?
No.
The board did meet this evening prior to tonight's meeting on personnel issues, as well as yesterday on personnel issues. Under finance, presentation from Mr. Schlossman on the preliminary budget. Mr. Schlossman?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Ryan is going to be moving my slides forward. Thank you, Ryan. So this evening on the board agenda is the 2021 budget, preliminary budget. So that we can, I'm sorry, it's the 21-22, so I'm not quite sure why that slide says that, so I apologize. So this is different this year for the school district because in the past, in the more recent past, the board had passed the opt-out resolution stating that the board would not go above Act 1 index. However, because of the challenging budget times that we are in, the Finance Committee decided that we were going to pass a preliminary budget, which is in accordance with the Act 1 calendar if you don't do the opt-out resolution. So that is why we're doing this evening. This is a short presentation. This budget is preliminary. It is very early on in the stage of budgeting. So I have a few brief slides to just go over the highlights of the budget with you. So this is the calendar. Again, I apologize for the error in the heading. It is for 21-22. So we are at the February 16th date. The March 4th is when referendum exceptions will be filed with PDE. And what that means is the board is authorizing the preliminary budget this evening as adopted, but also is authorizing that we can apply to PDE for referendum exceptions. The exception that the district actually qualifies for at this point in time is the special education exception. So that must be filed with PDE on March 4th. And then from now until May is when the real refining is going to take place. We will find out more about the federal and state funding levels. We're going to continuously look at our local revenue trends and also analyze our staffing needs and other expenditures as we go throughout the spring, with a proposed final budget on the agenda for May 17th and the final budget on June 21st. So this slide shows the overall high-level budget summary. Total revenues of $113 million, total expenditures of $120 million, with a deficit of $7 million. Within the expenditure budget is a $1 million contingency, which we typically don't need to use. So with that removed, we have a $6 million deficit to cover. And this particular budget shows that we will be using our committed PSERS fund balance to cover that entire deficit. You can see as it compares to the prior year or the current year that we're in, it's a $2 million increase in revenues, which we'll look at in a minute, and a $4.9 million expenditure change for a change of $2.9 million year over year. So this slide shows a summary of our revenues and our expenditures and the pie charts of the breakdown of the percentage of the total. So if we look at our local, if we look at our revenues, our local is 73% of the total. That is not necessarily the same scenario of every school district. This is our particular scenario. So you can see that the local taxpayer has 73% of the burden of our expenditures in this budget. The state's at 24%. That could change if Governor Wolf's budget, his proposal would go through. The federal piece is 3%, with other being at 0%. The expenditures, as you can see, salary and benefits make up 76% of our expenditure budget. Everything other than non-personnel costs and debt is everything other than personnel costs and debt is 16.1 million, or 13%. Debt service is our annual debt service expenditure that's scheduled at $10.9 million. We have $72 million of debt remaining outstanding. In about 8 years, that'll be paid off. The phase-in of additional staff of $0.6 million is related to our feasibility study, in which we see that there might be a growing enrollment for elementary students that we would need to phase in additional staff. So that is the year one phase in at this point. And the budgetary reserve, as I mentioned before, is there for any type of unexpected expenditures for $120 million. So our local revenues, the biggest part of the increase in local revenues has to deal with our real estate tax. So Act 1 allows us a 3.7% increase in millage. With the PDE referendum exception, that would give us another 0.43 mils for a total of 1.4 mils in this particular preliminary budget. We've also realized a 1% net assessment growth, that's net of appeals, and our other local revenues are slightly recovering in this particular budget model, and we will continue to analyze that. Our state revenues at this point are flat, other than the increase in FICA and PSERS related to our increased costs in payroll. As I said, the governor's budget is a proposal that some say was dead on arrival, but we hope that some of it will be given some consideration. The federal funding includes 100% of the ESSER II funding related to the CARES Act of $2.4 million. That could be spread over several years, but in this particular version of the budget, we're including 100% into next year. Our salaries and benefits make up, as we saw in the pie chart, the most of our expenditures. We do have ongoing negotiations with WEA. This is the last year of their contract. There is an increase in the budget for salaries. Their PSERS increase is up 0.44% to 34.94. And our medical insurance premiums at this point include not to exceed 3% as set by the Berks Trust. Other non-personnel costs, one of our biggest challenges this year and into next year is our cyber charter school tuition. There is no state and federal funding that will pay for that. That's all on the local taxpayer, and we have seen a tremendous increase in enrollment of 110 students this year compared to 71 last year. So it's quite an increase, and we have a slide to talk about that in a few seconds. Debt service, the scheduled repayment is $300,000 less for this year, and again, our phase-in for additional staff, as mentioned before, is $600,000. So here's a chart of special education costs. These are actual costs, not budget, just to show how much of the state and federal subsidy portion of the total cost has remained flat and how much of the local share has increased. You can see in that 10-year slide that the local share has gone from $6.1 million. So the light blue bar in year 10, 11 is $6.1 million of local share, local tax is paying the special education costs. In 2019-20, that light blue bar is $14.2 million. So that's a $9 million increase over those 10 years on the local share alone, or 98% increase, versus the dark blue bar of the state and federal subsidy to help us pay for these costs has remained pretty flat, about a 30% increase, or $900,000 over those 10 years. So you can see that part of Governor Wolf's budget proposal was to increase our special education subsidy, so we hope that some of that might come through. This chart just depicts the charter school tuition costs, including the projected for this year and the budget for next year. So I just want to touch on this a little bit. As I said, there's 110 students right now enrolled in cyber charter schools, and last year it was 71 students. The split between that is 80 regular education students and 30 special education students this year. So those costs are going to exceed $1.7 million for this year. Again, there's no federal state subsidy that will compensate for that. We are hoping to reach out to our families. We've already done that this year to bring them back to Wilson. So we're hoping that the 21-22 budget, we can have a better situation. It's still not great, but we're hoping to bring back some families. So the difference there is about $133,000 between the projection and next year. So that would be about 10 students. So we're hoping that it will get better than that. This slide just shows the millage history for several years. The highlighted yellow column in the top section is the millage rate that is incorporated into this budget that's on the agenda for this evening. It includes 0.97 Act 1 mills and then 0.43 special education exception mills for a total millage of 1.4. That's a 5.3% increase. As you can see, last year we had a 0% increase. Both sides are compounding. We hope to not land here in May, but this is where we're starting. In the bottom section, you can see that just examples of what the annual increase would be for a taxpayer with a homestead, and there's various 4 scenarios of assessed value. So a $100,000 assessed home would have an annual increase of $140, a total tax bill of $2,766. And you can see the other scenarios there. The median household assessment is $120,800 for an annual increase of $169. And this slide briefly shows our general fund balances. The column in green is where we're budgeted to land at the end of this June. The middle column represents the budget that's before you without the contingency having to be used. So that $6 million would be taken out of the committed fund balance for PEASers, leaving us with $11 million. And I have a footnote there that the unassigned fund balance, there's a board policy that requires us to have that fund balance be at least 3% of the subsequent year's budget expenditures. So in order to do that and to land there, we have to be looking always at the next year and projecting what that would be. At this point, in order to get to 3%, we have to look at next year. And again, that would be involving the phase-in of staffing for the feasibility study. So it's just a matter of adjusting that number possibly to extend that timing. And that is all I have for this budget presentation. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. 2.2, request approval of the 2021-2022 preliminary budget and authorization referendum exceptions as presented. 2.3, request approval to advertise bids for the 2021-2022 school year per attached bid schedule. 2.4, request approval of the budget transfers dated January 14, 2021 through February 10, 2021 as attached. 2.5, we're looking for a motion to approve items 2.2 through 2.4 as presented. Do we have a motion? Mr. Martin first. Do we have a second? Mr. Schneider, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the school board meeting dated February 1st, 2021. A motion? Mrs. Cocker first. Do you have a second? Mr. Case, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Treasurer's report, Mr. Martin.
Yes, I submit, Mr. President, for approval tonight, the Treasury report, investment report, the general and capital funds reports as attached.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Schneider, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Payment of bills, Mr. Martin.
Mr. President, I submit for approval out of the general fund tonight, $2,812,620.13. And out of the 2019 A bond fund, $7,680.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. McCray, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Financial reports, Mr. Martin.
And Mr. President, I submit for approval all for the month of January, the cafeteria report, child care report, the Southern Middle School report, Wilson West Middle School, and the senior high report.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mrs. Cocker, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Superintendent's report, Dr. Fadley.
Thank you, President Hart. Tonight, I present the personnel and program recommendations, but prior to the board voting, we have a larger than normal number of retirements listed on the agenda, and I think it is just important for us to thank these individuals for their years of service to the Wilson School District. First, Cheryl Borgia, librarian at West Middle School with 23 years of service to the district. Ellen Chen, counselor at Green Valley with 16 years of service to the district. Vicki Jones, learning support teacher, Green Valley, with 20 years of service to the district. Charles Lentz, chemistry teacher at the high school, 17 years of service to the district. Art Morris, special education teacher, district-wide, 27 years of service to the district. Jacqueline O'Dages, first grade at Whitfield, 32 years of service to the district. Sharon Shirk, grade 3, Shiloh Hills, 34 years of service to the district. Dan Sekanic, business teacher at the high school and the developer of our esteemed internship program in the Wilson School District, 34 years of service to the district. And principal of Wilson West Middle School, Kyle Weatherhold, with 21 years of service to the Wilson School District. This is a lot of experience going into the next phase of their journey in life, and I want to wish each and every one of them success in the future, and thank them on behalf of the Wilson community for their service to our children over their careers.
Thank you. And again, congratulations to all of those that are retiring this year. We do appreciate your service and wish you the best on your next chapter in life. Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve items 7.1 through 7.9 as presented? Mrs. Copper first. Do a second? Yes, we'll get there. Second, Dr. Kennedy. Any discussion?
I pride myself on not ever regretting ever voting any of my votes that I've ever had. And I'm starting to think that this might be my first regret voting for this retirement package. Because, looking at all those years on there is pretty astounding. And I'd like to thank Jackie O'Dodges for giving me a heads up last week that this was going to be on the agenda, so I wasn't a blithering idiot when I saw it on there. I taught with her for a long time at Whitfield. She was a mentor of mine. She's a phenomenal individual. I once made fun of her for Rita Barban having 3 car seats lined up in the back of their car, and I totally regret that for sure, because that came back to haunt me with an extra. But I just think that there's huge shoes to fill in a lot of these places. And I've never gotten to see Sharon Shirk teach, but I know that she did produce one of the best student teachers I've ever had. And so I can only imagine if she's a tenth of as good of a teacher as her mom was, that Mrs. Shirk must have been an amazing teacher. And, I look up at that list and I think, oh, did we make a mistake letting everybody go? But I will dearly miss them, and I'm very jealous. So.
I'd just like to add, first off, there's a lot of great names up there, a lot of great people that we've all known personally, myself included, and I'd like to thank each and every one of them, all the retirees, for the best. Our community and our families have grown because of all your dedication and excellence. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Kyle Weatherhold, principal of Wilson West. From the beginning, Kyle has had a great vision of what he wanted for Wilson West. He put together a great team and built something really special for our district. He cares and believes in all kids and deeply about the whole child. He easily finds the good in every student that has ever gone through his building and always believes in his teachers and staff. Behind the scenes, he never stopped fighting for his students and his people, and in return, they took care of him. The building was like a family and is like a family. PA Principal of the Year does not say enough. For me, Kyle is a role model as a father, a husband, a leader, and an educator. I am one of the many who will work diligently to continue his vision to build upon what Kyle started here at Wilson. Thank you, Kyle, Suzanne, and the entire Weatherhold family for your dedication to our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Any other discussion or comments?
I think we can personally thank Art here this evening for joining us here. Obviously, we're saying, many kind words to folks that are retiring, but certainly Art here personally, thank you very much, and good luck in your retirement. You'll certainly be missed. Art not only is a teacher here, but has given a lot of extra time with extracurriculars and coaching many different sports here. So he's gone above and beyond his time here at Wilson and has really had an impact on many students, both inside and outside the classroom. And to just, piggyback upon what Mr. Case had to say, when my children, my youngest is in 8th grade now at West, and my oldest went through West, and I think some of the greatest accolades that you can hear about Kyle as a leader from some of the teacher and staff that have worked for him is that they would literally run through fire for him. To have a leader that inspires folks underneath them to say those types of words speaks volumes, I think, to his leadership both as a principal and as an individual. So he certainly will be sorely missed. Ellen Chen I've known since Maddie, who's now 16, was, a young, bright-eyed kindergartner. So thank you to the rest of the folks that have given their time to the district.
Any other comments? We have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Martin? Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Human Resources, 8.1, request to approve the employees for specialized leave under the FFCRA to ensure Beezer's years of service credit is maintained. 8.2, request to approve the Child Care COVID-19 Pandemic Relief Award as attached. Jumping to 8.4, request to approve the updated Act 93 Administrative Agreement, which is an extension through June 30, 2024, as a result of the MOU approved July 20, 2020, as attached. Looking for a motion to approve items 8.1, 8.2, and 8.4.
So moved.
Mr. Martin, do we have a second?
Cocker?
Mrs. Cocker, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
8.3, request to approve administrator salaries effective July 1st, 2021. Looking for a motion?
Cocker?
Mrs. Cocker first, do you have a second? Mrs. Casper, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
And Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes.
No, I'm sorry, abstain.
Oh, okay.
A little too anxious there.
8 yes, 0 no, 1 abstain.
Under Student Services, request approval of the 2021-2022 school year calendar. 9.2, request approval of the attached affiliation agreement with Harcum College to provide a clinical experience for occupational therapy assistant and physical therapy assistant students, pending solicitor's review and approval. 9.3, request permission to approve the adoption settlement agreement and release to establish an education fund to be held and managed by the Wilson School District in the amount of $18,000 for legitimate educational expenses. 9.4, request permission to approve the adoption of a settlement agreement and release to establish an educational fund to be held and managed by the Wilson School District in the amount of $40,000. Looking to approve items 9.1 and 9.4. Do we have a motion? Mrs. Casper, do we have a second? Mr. Schneider, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Technology. Mrs. Cocker.
10.1, request permission to enter into a 60-month contract with Comcast to provide a 1 gigabit dedicated Ethernet connection between the Administration Building and Berkshire Heights Early Elementary Center at a cost of $916.54 per month, starting July 1st, 2021. Their service is E-rate eligible at 50% discount, pending solicitor review and approval. 10.2, request permission to enter into an agreement with the Berks County Intermediate Unit to provide a 10 gigabyte regional wide area network connection for a 5-year term and 1.5 gigabytes of commodity internet for a 3-year term with the option to purchase additional bandwidth. Total cost per month for the first 3 months at $3,192.45. Total cost per month for months 4 through 36 at $2,847.74. Total cost per month for the remainder of the contract to be $2,847.74 if contract extensions utilized or lower dependent on internet bids received after the initial 3-year internet term. The service is E-rate eligible at 50% discount. All costs listed are pre-rate discount, pending solicitor review and approval. 10.3, request to approve the acquisition of a new Ricoh Pro C7 200 for central duplication at an estimated cost of $1,689 per month from Stratix Systems, 1011 North Park Road, Wyomissing, at the recommendation of the Facilities Committee.
Looking for a motion to approve 10.1 through 10.3 as presented. Mr. Schneider first. Do we have a second? Mr. Case, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Operations, Mrs. Cocker.
11.1, request to approve the purchase of new industrial washers and dryers for school district use from AC Power Company, Inc., Commercial Laundry Solutions, 77 Steam Whistle Drive, Ivyland, PA, at a cost of $23,455 at the recommendation of the Facilities Committee. 11.2, request to approve the purchase of 2 basketball outfits, galvanized steel post, and 4-foot offset under PA state contract at a price of $2,590 from GEA Associates, Inc., at the recommendation of the Facilities Committee. 11.3, request to approve to install card reader station cover awnings at 3 elementary schools by Heidler Roofing at a total cost of $6,225. These will be at Spring Ridge, Shiloh Hills, and Green Valley Elementary Schools at the recommendation of the Facilities Committee. 11.4, request to approve the purchase of a Power Liner 3500 line painter from Sherwin-Williams at a cost of $3,475.
Looking for a motion to approve items 11.1 through 11.4 as presented.
Agreed.
Mr. Negrini first. Do we have a second? Mr. McCray, any discussion?
Briefly.
Yes.
Just the washer and dryers, that the equipment is more than 25 years old. Costs of replacement, parts, if you can even find them, are certainly a factor. There will be a 50% decrease in the energy and water costs by having something that's much more modern. So certainly those washers and dryers have outlived their life cycle. The Power Liner, again, that is a piece of equipment that is more than 15 years old. And those are the 2 highlights for costs with that. The awnings, for whatever reason, as part of the design, when we did put in those card readers, I think when those awnings were originally installed, we didn't have card readers there, so all of the visitors that we have in the building are essentially waiting out there in the rain until they're buzzed in. So that is the reasoning for that awning to cover that particular area. It's just not a design flaw initially, it just wasn't part of the technology that we had at those buildings at the time. So that's all I have to say on those
Thank you.
matters.
Any other discussion? Go ahead first and a second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
11.6, request to approve the upgrade the district message sign outside Woodfield to an LED sign at a cost up to $47,500 with installation by Signature Sign, Inc., at the recommendation of the Facilities Committee.
Looking for a motion to approve 11.6 as presented.
Agreed.
Mr. Negrini first. Do you have a second? Mr. Case second. Any discussion? Yes.
So I actually requested to have this pulled out because I believe it was brought up when I was a few years ago on the Technology Committee. I was not a huge fan of the price tag, and I think maybe that has actually increased since then. So I have a few concerns about taking the current sign that we have and turning it into an LED sign. One is that it could be a distraction to drivers, and the fact that it's in a school zone and we ourselves would be creating a distraction, I'm not a huge fan of. The price tag at $47,500 at our current times with finances, and I understand that it's coming from our bond. However, I'm sure we could find other uses for the money other than an electronic sign at the time. And as well, I understand the purpose of the sign is to communicate messages to our community. However, I don't know that that's the best thing to do while they're driving by. And in addition to the sign, we also have our website, Bulldog Blitz for elementary families, Class Dojo, and as well as all of our social media posts to the community at large. So that's just my personal take on the LED marquee, and I just wanted to make that comment separate from the other items on that list.
Thank you. Any other discussion? We have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Cocker?
No.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
No.
And Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Okay, that is 7 yes, 2 no.
Under Curriculum and Staff Development, 12.1, requesting approval to pay Jacob Peterson for the first semester for virtual financial planning in the amount of $7,900. 12.2, request approval to grant permission for a contract with John's Driving School to assist the BCIU and Wilson School District in providing the Pennsylvania Department of Education Enhanced Driver's Education Program, pending solicitor review and approval. 12.3, request approval of the Student Practicum Affiliation Agreement between Lehigh University and Wilson School District, pending solicitor review and approval. Looking for a motion to approve agenda curriculum staff development items 12.1 through 12.3 as presented. Dr. Kennedy first. Do we have a second? Mrs. Casper, any discussion?
Mr. Hart, I'd like to make a comment regarding item 12.2. Just to clarify that the Wilson School District has a long history of providing this service to our community through our employee, Joel Dries. This will not take away from the services that Mr. Dries provides to our students, but it has become very evident that Mr. Dries is not able to service all of the students that the demand requires. This will provide a comparable cost rate for students in our community that aren't selected or don't have the ability to have Mr. Dries serve them in the behind-the-wheel driver's ed, that they will have an option that is delivered across the Commonwealth from John's Driving School at a comparable rate so that our students can receive these services, and the parents will benefit from the decrease in their insurance costs as a result of going through this driving school. That's it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? We have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under childcare, 13.1, request approval for childcare tuition rates for the 2021-2022 year as attached. Do we have a motion? Mrs. Cocker first. Mr. Martin? Second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under extracurricular, 14.1, as recommended by the Facilities Committee, request approval of the following expenditures to be purchased using capital reserve funds: new track and field equipment not to exceed $30,000, replace 4 basketball backboards at Wilson Southern Middle School at a cost of $6,900, replace 4 basketball backboards at the lower house at a cost of $6,900, and new volleyball poles, pads, and related equipment for the high school at a cost of $4,240. Looking for a motion? Mr. Negrini first. Do you have a second? Mr. Case, second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
It's 9 yes, 0 no.
Miscellaneous, we have the enrollment report attached. Under committees, 16.1, Berks Career and Technology Center. Mrs. Casper.
Yes. We have not met, but I did have an announcement to make, and maybe some of us saw it in the paper recently. On February 11th, the BCTC received approval from the Pennsylvania Apprenticeship Council to be a registered apprenticeship provider in the field of electrical. To put this into perspective, the BCTC had been offering related instruction to apprentices since the 1980s, and currently has the largest CTC adult ed RTI apprenticeship enrollment in the state. So by becoming a registered apprenticeship provider, BCTC now will be able to do a lot of the heavy lifting for our local electrical employers in the region. And this will certainly benefit our local small businesses. This process apparently was really grueling, as BCTC was challenged by several members of the Pennsylvania Apprenticeship Council. Plus, it's customary that in apprenticeship programs, such as the one at BCTC, the related instruction can also lead to a college degree, thereby providing opportunity for our students to earn both academic and occupational credentials at the same time. So this further enhances what I feel is the gem that we have in BCTC and the possibilities that it offers for all of our students, adults included. So I hope that we can continue to shed the stigma that BCTC is only for certain students and recognize more and more the benefits that it has to offer. So our next meeting is scheduled for February the 24th at the West Campus.
Thank you.
That's my report.
16.2, Wilson Equity Task Force. Again, Mrs. Casper.
Yes, our last meeting, which was scheduled for February 3rd, was rescheduled for tomorrow. So we'll be meeting tomorrow in the library at 3 o'clock.
Thank you. Berks County IU, Dr. Kennedy.
I have an easy report this week. Neither the IU nor the curriculum committee has met since last time. The IU is meeting this Thursday, starting at 6:15, and the curriculum committee is meeting on February 24th at 4 o'clock upstairs in the admin building.
Berks EIT, Mr. Schlossman.
I have no report, thank you.
Extracurricular, Mrs. Cocker.
Yes, the extracurricular committee met last Monday, February 8th at noon. I have a few sports highlights from our athletic director, Mr. Kaufman. The wrestling team is Berks County champions. I don't know if anyone saw the photo in the paper, but I was very proud of all of their consistent mask wearing in the photo, which is always something positive to see. The boys swimming and diving and the girls swimming and diving are both Central Penn League champions. So those are definitely some highlights to be really proud of our consistent performance for our athletes.
Thank you. Finance, Mr. I'm sorry. Actually, facilities, Mr. Negrini.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. And just to add on to Ms. Cucker's report for extracurricular, the relay team of Shelby Kahn, Caitlin Bidding, Amalia Bradburn, and Riley Wenzel set a pool record at that championship meet in the 4x100 freestyle relay. That pool record was set a number of years ago, and the team that set it, that was just recently broken by those 4 senior girls, went on to win state gold. So it bodes well for those 4 seniors in setting that record. So congratulations to them. Our facilities committee met on February 8th. As you can see, there were a number of items on tonight's agenda that we discussed at the meeting. A few additional items that were discussed, one of which that I've talked about previously, about the prospect of naming the high school auditorium after Frank Ferraro. We're continuing to do some further vetting and discussions on that, and should have some additional information for the rest of the board in the near future. We're awaiting some bid work for the natatorium tile work and looking at recycling out the Colorado timing device. It seems to be at the end of its life cycle. That may be included in the bid that's forthcoming. The Wilson West track, we discussed 3 different proposals for work on the track over at West. It's coming to the end of its life cycle. There were 3 options at different price points. Option 1 was to respray urethane at a cost of just under $200,000. Option 2 was an overpour of urethane at a cost of almost $250,000. And option 3 was essentially removal and disposal of the existing track surface and installing a new surface on there at a cost of $328,000. The cost of that project was originally budgeted at $400,000, so all 3 of the options obviously come in under budget. Option number 3 does extend the life of the track anywhere between 8 and 10 years and comes with a 5-year warranty. So it was recommended by the Facilities Committee to move forward with option 3. That should be forthcoming on a later agenda. An ADA ramp will be installed over at Cuckooing Creek at no cost to the district. And lastly, I'm sorry, 2 items left. The roofing contracts at the high school and the lower house has come in under budget by almost $800,000. So not only will we be able to move forward with possible early start, but there will be further discussions in terms of some of the savings. It does seem to be a popular decision and choice by many that we may repeat many of the same things that we did with last year's graduation. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance, Mr. Martin.
Oh, yes, we met last Monday to discuss the child care budget as well as the budget we saw tonight, and approved both of those, so thank you, appreciate that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Human Resources, no report. Legislative, Mr. Martin.
Yes, as Christine mentioned, that the governor proposed the budget. It was kind of ludicrous, and as you saw, it was dead on arrival, but obviously you reach for the sky, maybe you'll touch a piece of grass when it comes down, but we'll see where that goes. The sessions don't start, the actual sessions don't start for the House or the Senate until March 15th, but in between now and then, there'll be plenty of discussions open to the public to hear both sides of the conversation. So once again, they don't return though until March 15th. This is for Amy, more or less. Dan Greenstein, the Chancellor of Higher Education System, gave a preview to Select Committee on his thoughts about realigning our educational system due to its increasing cost and burden financially on the state. So although these aren't official recommendations, but there's going to be geographic regions put together where certain schools with declining enrollment will be grouped with a new school, and they will have one chancellor, and they will all be operating under one control. All the existing colleges will remain open as branch campuses to ensure that you still have that ability to attend various locations. As of now, none of those locations would be closed. They feel that this will save significant amounts of money while opening up endless streams of opportunities to learn more. So with that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Public Relations, Mrs. Troutman.
Thank you. I just have a couple of items. I wanted to report that the Wilson High School held a National Day of Signing recognition ceremony for high school seniors who are planning to participate in college athletics. We were thrilled that we had a record number of 33 student athletes who will be continuing their athletic careers after graduation who were recognized in that ceremony. Obviously, because of restrictions with attendance, we were able to live stream that event for the community as well, so you can always check it out on our YouTube page. So I just want to say again, we're thrilled that we're able to hold these types of events for our seniors through a lot of efforts of our team who are always thinking outside the box to create safe ways to create memorable moments for our students. So again, thank you to all that were involved in that event. I also want to remind the community that kindergarten registration for the 2021-2022 school year is now available online. We've been promoting registration through our district communications channels. There is a link on the homepage of our website as well. And we are very, very excited to welcome our newest class of Bulldogs to the Wilson School District. And then finally, I feel like I talk a lot about the Honors Internship Program because I truly believe from the bottom of my heart it's one of the greatest things that we offer to our students. And once again, we've promoted that wonderful program through a campaign that my intern, Lexi Levo, developed on social media. She reached out to a number of interns that are involved in that program, and then she created a social media campaign where she shared lots of different experiences that those interns have had, and that always creates just a great buzz in our community, lots of great responses, lots of people sharing those posts. So again, I think Dr. Faley mentioned this, we want to recognize Dan Sukanik, who is the creator of that program, has run that program just amazingly well. He has grown it to be one of the strongest programs, if not the strongest in our community. And he is retiring, and we will miss him. But he has created a legacy in this organization that I know will continue throughout and will really make a huge impact, not only on the students who are part of that program, but also on all of us who get the opportunity to work with these amazing high school students. So again, I can't say enough about that program, and certainly I want to wish, I'm going to call him Mr. Sukanik because he was actually my teacher, the best in his retirement.
Thank you. Education Foundation, Mr. Case.
Yes, I just want to say I hope everyone enjoyed all the wings last Friday. Everyone got them? Raise your hand. They're delicious. My family loved them. So I just want to thank Dan Weber and Sarah Jin and the WEF and everyone else involved for cooking all the wings and taking care of that, because that was phenomenal. I hope we do more things like that and spreading good cheer throughout the district. I look forward to the venture grants coming out soon and figuring out what kind of projects the teachers and the staff are going to be doing this year. So that's soon, I believe, at our next WEF meeting, which is March 26th at 7:30 a.m. That's my report.
Thank you. Technology, Mr. Schneider.
I have no report.
Student Outreach, Ms. Gianni Clark.
This weekend, Penn State is holding their annual Thon Event. Former Wilson students, including Drew, who I believe participated in one of our first mini-thons, is participating in the 48-hour event to raise money for the fight against childhood cancer. Mini-Thon shared their support by writing encouraging cards for Drew. Mini-Thon would also like to thank everyone who supported them for their pop-up sale and for the Busy Bees fundraiser, which is happening February 26th. It's a canvas painting party, and they're painting a llama, so I'm excited to see all the results from their artwork. Every Tuesday, Wilson High School Student Government features a high school teacher. Our teacher for today is Ms. Timpson, who is our honors chemistry and AP chemistry teacher. Make sure to check out her feature on the Instagram page at Wilson High SG. And tomorrow, Student Gov will be handing out hot chocolate and donuts to the crossing guards located near the high school in appreciation for their dedication to getting students to school safely.
Thank you. We do not have any participation on non-agenda items, but Mr. Maravich, any comments? Okay. Any other business before the board? Go ahead, Ms. Martin.
I just want to give kind of a macro overview of a question that is often asked to me: why states are open during COVID and why they continue to open up more and more. And there's a simple reason for this. It's finance. Most states are on the verge of bankruptcy, as well as our federal government. The federal government cannot go through another situation we had back in February. So, here's an article that just came in today. Bankruptcies are up 33%. The Right now, as of today, we have $22.48 trillion in deficit. So every child that's born owes right now $67,000 in debt. So what we've done, we've kind of handicapped future generations. So I just want to let you know that, and I'll make a copy of this article. Some stuff I'm saying is in this article, but it's pretty crucial. So that's the reason why states are staying open. Florida's been open, continues to be open, and there's a reason. You can't keep shutting stuff down. And if, like I said, the government actually has, I'll give you the exact amount. Our largest holder of treasuries is China. They right now, they own 18.92% of our outstanding treasury debt. Surprisingly, Japan's second. I didn't realize they are runner-up. But you know, China would never attack us because they would go bankrupt because they knocked us out. So I just, you know, get that question a lot. People don't really understand some of the reasons why states are opening or continue to push to open, because the finances just dictate they have to. So that's it.
Thank you. Any other comment or business before the board? Yes, Dr. Fadley.
The first thing that I want to do is thank Christine for her budget presentation this evening. And I want to build upon a couple of the items that she discussed. On February 24th, Mr. Andrew Pottinger, Dr. Jill Hackman, and I will be doing a presentation to the Berks County legislators, senators, and representatives that represent our county in regards to a targeted advocacy campaign that we will be moving forward and have been working on for the better part of 6 months as a group of superintendents alongside the IU. The focus of our conversation is going to be the increasing special education costs and how those increasing special education costs are impacting our local taxpayers and our individual school districts, because the lion's share, as you saw by Mrs. Schlossman's graph, the lion's share of that expense is on the shoulders of our local taxpayers. Not saying that the services aren't much needed and necessary, but the costs are going up so significantly that there needs to be some targeted advocacy on how to change the needle, so to say, on how that particular fund source comes to our local school districts across Berks County and the Commonwealth. The second item that's on there is another item that she addressed in her presentation, and that is the increasing costs of the cyber charter expenses as they result in hundreds of thousands of dollars of increased expenses. Again, those taxpayer dollars are leaving our district and supporting organizations that aren't in Berks County, a majority of them. So it is important that as we present to our legislators on February 24th, that we give them pieces of information in short, concise sound bites and graphics that they can utilize as they navigate through the complexities of trying to solve two very large issues in our Commonwealth. So I look forward to that presentation on the 24th. And as we push out the targeted advocacy campaign, you'll start to see information across the county in various formats to try to inform our taxpayers in Wilson as well as the rest of our school districts. The second piece is I stopped by the swimming championships yesterday, and unfortunately I was not there when the girls set their record-breaking relay swim, but I did have the opportunity to talk with Mrs. Kurtz, who did a phenomenal job of running that event. And she was so appreciative of the efforts that this board has undertaken to make sure that Number one, the natatorium is kept in top shape, and she was very complimentary of the air quality and the changes that have happened as a result of Mr. Simcox and his team and others identifying a solution that saved the district hundreds of thousands of dollars of not having to expend those resources. But very proud of our girls relay team and all of our swimmers, for that matter, for how they represented themselves this year. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other business? Looking for a motion to adjourn? Mr. Schneider first, you have a second? Mr. Martin?